Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Marty Haldane. I am the founder and CEO of Anow.com. And I'm joined here today with a celebrity in the appraisal world, Dustin Harris, who not only is an appraiser and runs a really great business that we're going to talk about today, but he's also the appraiser coach, like the appraiser coach. So probably even trademarked by this point. But welcome, Dustin. We're super happy to have you here.
Well, Marty, it's my pleasure. You and I go way back, good friends, and it's an honor to be here. It really is. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. No, it's been always trying to get you on. You're a busy guy. No, I'm just kidding. No.
I pretend to be busy.
Yeah, Dustin and I have known each other for a very long time, and Dustin has been an Anow customer for a very long time too. And that doesn't make you my friend by default. So I've known Dustin before that.
So I can stop paying now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Have you paid? No,
Wait a second. Let's skip over that.
All right. So yeah, everybody. There's not really a clear agenda. It's not a demo. It's just a great way to learn about Dustin, his business. See if you can get any tips and tricks and pointers from him. Just from the way that he runs his own appraisal business, because it is extremely impressive, and he's taken it from here to, I don't even think I can stretch my arm enough, and we'll talk about that in a bit, and also the coaching things that he has too for appraisers as well. So without anything else, and I won't keep pumping your tires for too long, but why don't you give us a little bit of a background, Dustin? How did you get started in the appraisal industry? What's your background?
Well, thanks, Marty. It's really good to be here. I'm looking over at the people that have joined, and I'm seeing a lot of familiar names, and I'm seeing this just does my heart good. I'm seeing a lot of names I don't recognize. So welcome everybody. It's an honor to be here with Marty and with the Anow team, and it's fun to kind of tell the story of what has kind of happened in my life as I've progressed through the ranks, if you will, of appraiser and business owner, and then on to mentoring and coaching. And so let me just give you a brief rundown for those of you who don't know my story. I grew up in a real estate home. And a lot of people would think, well, because if you grew up, as a son of a real estate agent, and then a broker, and then an appraiser, that it's a natural shoe-in for you to become an appraiser. And nothing could be further from the truth, Marty. I fought against it my whole life. Now, keep in mind, my dad, he lived through the 80s, and he lived through interest rates that were 18, 20%, and it was tough going. And I saw him work and work and work. And honestly, we didn't have much. Looking back on it now, it's even more clear than it was when I was a kid. Sometimes you don't know how poor you are when you're in that spot, but we struggled financially. And as I got older, when I say older, I mean later teenage years, and started to decide what it was that I wanted to do with my life, it was basically anything but appraisal. I did not want to be involved in real estate at all. I didn't want to be involved in real estate appraisal. And it was because my paradigm was so small. My paradigm was, listen, I know what appraisal is, and it's my dad working, and making very little money. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that. I went to school, went to college, and as I was in college, I realized that I need to start paying my bills. I was newly married. We had a baby on the way, and it was time to really buckle down and take life seriously. And I started looking around at the different jobs that were available in the small college town that I was involved in, and it was kind of scary, man. I mean, it was minimum wage, sitting on an assembly line, putting bolts on equipment. I mean, that really was the best job I could find. Wow. And so I came crawling back to Daddy and said, hey, you know how you've always offered to be my mentor? Let's maybe do that. And he was kind enough to ignore all of the bad things I said about appraisal for so many years, and had pity on me and trained me to be an appraiser. And the rest is history. I've been doing this now for 25 years.
That's really cool. I always like hearing that. I can appreciate the family business story, because I also came and worked for my dad's a similar process where it was, what do I do out of school? I could go here. And then father said, join me. And everybody thinks that's easy. It sounds good. And when you tell the story, it's like, oh, great, I get to join the family business. Lucky you, which of course, very fortunate. We both were, and that's nice to have. But what nobody else realizes is working for your dad, you have to put up with a lot of stuff, and then you do a lot of extra work nobody else has to do because they push you, their dads, which is we're fortunate for. But tell us tell everybody what it was like working for your dad. And
I have to say my dad is, and he's still alive, so I have to be nice about him. But in all seriousness, no, he was really a great mentor. We had a unique situation where we were actually trained. He trained me in another state. And so I was living in Utah, he was living in Idaho, and we were about 3 hours apart. And so he was not there by my side. We were on the phone a lot. There wasn't Zoom back then. And so we were spending a lot of time, talking back and forth on the phone, and he was helping me. When I went to pick up my first computer, I literally, this is no joke, I literally did not know how to turn it on. I had to call him to ask him how to turn it on because I was afraid if I hit that little button that was the on button, that it would explode. I really knew nothing about this stuff. Now, keep in mind, this is 1996. The internet really wasn't a thing yet, and I was just learning as I go. But thankfully, he was very, very accommodating. He was very kind. The world was a little bit different back then. I can't imagine training somebody in another state right now without having a lot of interaction personally because of the way that the clients often require, that appraisers, their mentor, be there for the inspection. Back then, that wasn't the case. In fact, I think during the 3 years that he was training me, maybe 3 times did he actually have to drive down and be a part of the inspection or walk through a property that I had walked through. Most of the time, it was pretty much on our own. He was very available, very kind about answering questions. And one of the cool things is I've actually never worked for my dad. Now let me explain that. When I started my company, remember, we're in a different state, and so I set up my own incorporation.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
And so he mentored me, but I've actually never worked under his banner. He's always had his company separate from mine. And so I think in the long run, that was actually a good thing. Now, when he retired, he sold that company to my brother, and I in turn ended up buying that from my brother. So in a roundabout way, I've worked for my dad, but never directly. So.
Interesting. Well, that's really impressive. So you started your own business right from the get-go. So let's talk about the business then.
Mm-hmm.
Where you are today, because I think that's what everybody wants to hear is hear about the type of business that you've built. Because you're talking about a 7-figure business, which in the appraisal world, that's a great number and a great target to have. So we went from, I know I've talked to you many times before. You started a business right from the very start, learned the appraisal business from this business. So you've obviously had the ups and downs, the not making money times, and then the making money times. So let's talk about how you've gone through that and kind of like what you started with. See if anyone can relate to that today, because I'm sure many still can. And then kind of where you've taken it, because you've grown, like I said, that you've got that 7-figure business now, and I think that's what everyone wants to hear is, how do I do that?
Right, sure. Well, and let me set the foundation, because I think it needs to be clear, and I think appraisers understand this, but just to lay it out there, 7 figures sounds awesome, and it was kind of a cool goal to hit last year, but it's gross, and with that comes a whole lot of payroll and a whole lot of bills and a whole lot of everything else, but also with that comes a lot of freedom, and so there's kind of this give and take where, as the business owner, it's exciting. It's fun to run this empire, if you will, and to constantly grow and deal with struggles and people leaving and having to replace and constantly making sure that we're in flux with what the market's doing. There's a whole lot that goes into the business side, but that's not where I started. I started with my knowledge, and my knowledge was very thin. My knowledge was looking around to see what my dad had done, looking around. I had a few other mentors, if you will, maybe not in the official mentor title, but there were 2 other appraisers that I connected with immediately up front. It was kind of a fluke. I was not one that was shy about reaching out and walking into someone's office and sitting down and saying, hey, I'm an appraiser too. Let's talk. And I had a couple that didn't take so kindly to that. They kind of wanted to do their own thing, and that's fine. I found some other appraisers that were very accommodating of that. There was an old guy in a little town called Preston, Idaho. If you've ever seen Napoleon Dynamite, that's when where it was filmed. And we used to I used to live about 30 miles from there, and that was one of my appraisal zones, if you will. And there was an old guy there, and when I say old, I mean this guy was up there. He was I think close to 90 years old and still doing appraisals. And I would go and I would stop at the convenience store and I would grab a Coke. That was his drink of choice, and I would walk in there and put the Coke on the desk, and we would just sit and chat for hours. And it was just fun to get to know what other people did. But you've probably heard me say this phrase before, and it rang true in my life, and that is, when you do what everybody else does, you get what everybody else gets. And that's what I did for 12 years. And to boil it down, Marty, it was, I mean, literally it was 60, 70 hours a week most of the time. And that ebbed and flowed a little bit with the market, but it was rare that I worked less than 50 hours a week. I mean, that was most of the time it was 60 plus. Some weeks were more than that. And burning the midnight oil and the weekends and the holidays and everything else, it was tough. It was tough. And the sad thing is I didn't have anything to show for it. I mean, the honest truth is I was struggling to make it. I was laughing the other day. I told my wife how many appraisals we had done in a month. And by the way, Anow was really helpful at just hitting a button, and I could see right away what we're doing. Back then I was using a spreadsheet. I mean, I was using a piece of paper, right, and just writing them down. I wasn't even in Excel at that point. But I remember when we did 8 appraisals in 1 month, and I thought, oh my gosh, we are just killing it, right?
Wow,
We started from nothing and started building this up, and I think the first month we did like 2 appraisals, and then we got 3 or 4, and then I mean it was like 6 months in and we got 8 appraisals, and my wife and we went out to dinner, man. That was awesome. What a milestone.
I hope it was somewhere fancy.
Right, exactly. Yeah, well, maybe McDonald's or something to celebrate, right? But that's the way it was for 12 years. I really struggled to make ends meet. To me, it was all about, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. And so I wasn't really open to help. I wasn't really open to, we didn't have all the fancy stuff that we've got now with the VAs and the technology and Anow and all of this stuff that we can utilize now. We didn't have back then.
Yeah.
So, a lot of that was true. If you wanted it done right, you had to do it yourself, or at least I didn't understand the mindset of the law of delegation and everything else. And
I think every business owner, that's one of the hardest things to do is, well, I can just do that. Why do I need to hire for these tiny little tasks? And you remember there are hundreds of them, if not thousands, as bigger that you get. Yeah. It's so hard to let that go. It is.
About 12 years into it, Marty, I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm getting burned out. I don't like what I do. We started moving a little bit into that AMC world at that point, not to where we are now, but they were creeping up, and that was where you could find some low-hanging fruit, if you will, for volume. And we started doing that, and the revisions that were coming back. And, there was a time when I really was, for lack of a better word, kind of depressed. I mean, here I am. I'm a big business owner. Look how cool I am, right? I'm running my own business. Well, no, I owned my job, is what I did.
Yeah, you bought yourself a job.
Exactly. And if I didn't work, if I was out, if I went on vacation, if I, you name it, if Dustin Harris wasn't sitting in that seat, the business stopped. Yeah. And that's a hard place to be in, because you feel constantly on stage. You feel constantly like you have to be performing. And it was exhausting. Yeah. And so long story short, Marty, I took some time, not off, but I took some time away from some other things that were important to me. It sounds silly now, but my wife and I used to watch, 2 to 3 hours worth of TV every night. That was how we would unwind from the day and relax and have fun and whatever. And there was a time that we said, you know what, let's get rid of the TV. Let's create a vacuum, if you will. And we did. And we created a vacuum. And all of a sudden now I've got 2 or 3 hours in the evening that I'm not doing anything else. What now? And I started to study success principles. I started looking at other people that have been successful in the past and people that were currently successful. And I put together what I call the principles of prosperity. The principle of prosperity are basically, these are principles that I see other successful people utilizing. One of them, just as an example, is the law of delegation. the law of savings, putting 10% aside, these different things that throughout history, successful people, maybe they haven't used all of them. I'm currently up to 16 laws or principles of prosperity, and that ebbs and flows depending on different things that I learned. But I started to utilize those in my own business, and all of a sudden, things started to change for me, and I started to realize that life could be better and life could be different. And here we are, 25 years into this, and it's really paying off. It's wonderful to set up a business that works. Now, do we have our struggles? Absolutely. Do we have difficulties? I mean, I'm looking at the chat, and Philip Gray, hi Philip, mentioned about the struggle we have right now of how do we grow if our trainees can't even go with us. On the inspection. It's such a struggle. We hear these lenders talk about how long it takes to do an appraisal and all of these appraiser shortages, which I think is foolish, maybe in certain pockets, but really nationwide, is there a shortage? I don't think so.
No way.
But here's the thing. If you really want to get appraisals done and you want to see people move in the right direction, allow us to use the principles that we know. And one of them is the law of delegation. Allow us to hire people, train people, be responsible for people, manage people that we can send out to do inspections so that we can do the important stuff back at the office. And that's a struggle that we're getting there.
Yeah, no, it's the disciplines that you need, and start one at a time. It's easy to get overwhelming and look at a big business and say, okay, yeah, they have all these people, they can do this. I am here. You just have to start somewhere, and it's like being disciplined, even if it's small. Like you said, saving 10%, that's not a lot, but if you do that, you might say, I don't have 10%. But if you have that mindset, you adjust everything else in order to accommodate that, and it just changes your mindset. I love that one because it then opens you up. Having that just extra little bit of a win, it will take you, like, your mind out of the gutter and just right out and just feeling way better, like you're accomplishing something just by honestly just doing certain things a little bit differently. And so what would you say was like the obviously, like you said, the pivotal moment was creating those rules, but like was it a hire that really started this off? When you talk about delegating, was it a hire? Was it your wife, or how did you really start kicking off the process from reading the books, getting mentored? What was the aha?
One of the biggest success principles is never hire your wife. I've adhered to that one. No. For me, it started out with technology. The first kind of aha for me was the technology thing, and not to throw my dad under the bus, but he was completely against my first purchase of a disto. My first laser measure was $650, and I'm telling you, when I say we probably went out to celebrate at McDonald's, that probably wasn't much of a joke, right? We didn't have much money at all, and to expend $650 on a toy, right?
Yeah.
It was a huge leap for me.
When you got your nice tape measure here, what's wrong with that?
Well, at least I had graduated to a lower at that point.
Yeah, okay.
It was a big jump, and I remember talking to my dad about it, and he said, "You've spent $650 on what?" And I said, "Dad, here's the thing. I've done the math, and it's going to help me, and I'm going to pay." Well, 2.5 months later, I had that thing paid for, meaning I was able to do things not a lot, just a little bit faster than I did in the past. And so 5 minutes here, 7 minutes there, 3 minutes here. If it takes me that much less time to do an inspection, well, guess what? I can squeeze another inspection in maybe twice a week. And all of a sudden this starts to add up, and it starts to make more sense that the efficiencies on the technology side will actually allow you to be able to do more with less. That's exactly what I see in Anow software, because a lot of people will look at it and they say, well, that costs so much per month. How could that be worth? I could just use a spreadsheet. Well, folks, if you really use it and you really understand what it does for you, right? The time that it takes off your table, this is what technology can do for you. When you can look at a screen and say, oh, that's what my business is doing. Oh, okay. That's how many personal appraisals I'm doing. That's where I am now compared to, we had a record-breaking month, Marty, in February. I know a lot of appraisers did. February 2021 was the best month that Appraisal Precision has ever had, ever in the 25 years. Guess what? I knew that the day it happened, right? The second it happened, I knew that because of the technology. The software just tells you what it is that you're doing, and we immediately know where we're at as a business owner. But back to your question, the next big step was human resources, right?
Yeah.
And
Before you
again,
go there, though, before I forget about, sorry to cut you off. I just want to ask one simple question about that because I think it's a really important one. When you talk about that, being able to see what businesses and like how important is that motivation? Like I know that triggers motivation for yourself and your team. How would you say that? Like how high would you measure that on how important that is to celebrate with yourself and your team?
That's a good question, and I'll be honest with you, it's one of my weaknesses. I don't stop to celebrate because I'm always moving forward, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the problems with entrepreneurs is we're never satisfied. Now,
Yeah.
it's also a plus because we're never satisfied, right? We're always moving forward. But I'm learning, and in fact, I did a webinar yesterday with my All-Star team, and the title of the webinar was Prosperity Through Rest. And we spent an hour and a half talking about the science behind taking time to celebrate, to relax, to regenerate your batteries, to make sure that we're taking time for ourselves daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Do you take a yearly vacation with your family, for example? Do you take a monthly honeymoon over the weekend with your wife? Do you take time on the weekends to play with your kids? Do you take time every night to say, you know what, work's done, I'm done with work, I'm going to focus on my family? And I think that's what life's all about right there.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I see all the time. We're friends on Facebook. I see what you do with your kids, and you work a lot, and you've built a good business, and yet you still have time to do that and spend time with your family. I mean, I have 4 young kids as well too, so it's like I extra appreciate that. Building your life around that is really important. But sorry, I cut you off before. Let's talk about that first hire.
It really did. It really did lead to the next thing because I said, well, if technology can do this for me, what can someone else do for me? Now, I'll be honest with you, Marty, I did it all wrong. When I say I studied the principles of prosperity and then started implementing them, I want to be clear. I studied the principles of prosperity, tried to figure them out, failed miserably over and over and over again, and then bootstrapped it and then got back up and said, you know what? Okay, that didn't work. Let's try something a little bit different. My first hire was a disaster.
Persistence.
Yeah, exactly. And when I hired my first secretary, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to search for the right person. I found somebody that was easy to find that needed a job. I put her in the seat. It was a disaster. It really was. And I'm still friends with her to this day, but she's a great person, but she was really wrong for that position. And I've learned over the years that there's certain things to employ to make sure that you do it right. And this is one of the things, Marty, that I really want to focus on because I teach these principles, and sometimes people will come back and say, well, Dustin, I get it. I know what you're saying, but I tried that and it didn't work, right? I tried to hire somebody. It didn't work. I tried to hire a VA. It didn't work. I tried to use A&L software. It didn't work. I tried to switch from this software company to this software company. It didn't work. And what they're saying is it didn't work yet, right? And as a coach and as a mentor, I've got to help them to see that and say, okay, let's talk about what happened. And let's talk about how we can do it again and not give up. Because here's what happens is I often see people, for example, going mobile. It's a great example because everybody's been here, done this. I've done it, right? We say, okay, we're going to go mobile. This is the year. I'm going to go mobile. I'm going to stop doing the clipboard and paper and pen, and I'm going to go digital. And they go out and they do 2, 3, 4 inspections, and they're like, this is taking me half as much more time as I was spending before. This isn't saving me any time at all. And I lost my report because the computer shut down, and fill in the blank, right? And what they do is they say, well, forget it. I'm used to doing it the other way. It worked just fine the other way, and they revert back instead of the persistence that pushes them through. And now you can look back and say, wow, I'm so glad I pushed through that because things are so much better now that we have this technology or this new system, or we hired the right secretary or the right virtual assistant, or fill in the blank. If it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't mean it's a bad principle. It may just have been bad implementation, or it may just have been a fluke that that particular thing doesn't work. I'll give you a quick example, Marty. When I first learned about VAs, virtual assistants, and in fact, the first time I ever heard of it was reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, that's a great book.
And I remember driving where I remember right where I was. I was just outside Teton Valley. I was listening to it on audio, and I remember this flash of, you know what? I'm going to do that. That's awesome. I'm going to do that. And I dug in and I looked at other mentors and other people that have done this, and I went through this process of study. Marty, I hired 4 virtual assistants before I found the right one. And I
Oh
could
yeah.
have easily given up after the first one, the second one, the third one. And finally, I've got the fourth one. And guess what? She's still with me today. She's awesome.
That's awesome. And so let me ask you this. So I look at a successful entrepreneur, and people can say it's hard work. It's working those 80, 90 hours a week. It's obsessing about it. It's being passionate about it. And it's like, yeah, you do that when you have to do that. It certainly doesn't let you control your life. But my opinion, and I think sounds like you'll agree, is it's persistence. It's just not giving up, but it's also not taking things and tools and expecting them to be perfect for you. It's like, you've got these things. Here's how I do it right now. I know I need this. That's why I'm trying it. I'm going to give it a shot and then not give up. You know what? And not forcing every person, every tool that you use just to accommodate you in your process. It's like, maybe I need to be a little bit different. Even if there's one thing that's not quite as good that I'm used to doing that I really like to do, but then it gives me 10 more things over here. But that's where the persistence is like just not giving up and like, okay, let me keep trying this. Let me try a different person. Maybe they're just not the right fit. Doesn't mean they're a bad person, just not a right fit. The software that I use, my style that I use, I mean, the type of device I have, maybe that's just what it is. And stop just being so stuck on how I do things right now and being like, maybe there, and it's not just thinking, always having an open mind that maybe there's a better way, but it's just, like I said, not making it all be completely for you, because nothing like that exists, in my opinion, anywhere. I mean, we use so many softwares that nothing's perfect.
There are principles and there are practices, and a successful business will marry those two.
Yeah.
Right. So the principle might be the law of delegation, right? That's a principle that works. In other words, utilizing the help of other team members that have the same goal and vision that you have to move that company forward. That's the principle, right? Yeah. The practice is hiring Susie, right? Susie is over here, and Susie, you put her in the seat and you train her and everything else. And if the principle doesn't meet the practice, meaning for whatever reason, it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean the principle's bad. It means, and it doesn't mean that Susie's bad. It just means that those things have not been married properly, right?
Yeah, and compromised.
Right, and maybe you take Susie out of that seat and put her in a different seat on the bus, right? Or you let her go altogether, but then you hire John. And let's say that John just gets it, right? And it works. And it's not perfect, but it works. And all of a sudden those principles and practices are married together. And all of a sudden that's when you see that success. And so as a business owner, I'm constantly looking to not necessarily refine my principles, because I think those principles are true and they always will be, but it's always trying to implement those on a level that will allow that marriage to happen and that success level. And one of the things that I talk about often, Marty, is what I call the yo-yo principle. And the yo-yo principle basically says, listen, if a yo-yo is going to go up, it first has to go down, right? A yo-yo is no fun if you're just holding it in your hand. The fun of a yo-yo is it goes up and it goes down. Well, guess what? So do businesses, so do people, so do relationships, so does your health, so does your wealth, so does so many things. And it's okay. You need to give yourself permission to fail. You need to give yourself permission to have bad days. You know, I also implement what I call the 82% rule. The 82% rule is I better be happy and up and going and successful 82% of the time, meaning 18% of the time I can fail.
Why the extra 2?
Well, you know, it's just a principle. I
like it. Yeah, I like it. A little more than 80. It's easy to say 80. No, that's good. Yeah. I recall, and I feel bad for not being able to give the person credit, but it's like a popular TED Talk, and I feel like it's applied to almost everything, like not just relationship wise, but business wise. And there's a guy, he asks, he says, do you remember the moment that your wife fell in love with you, or you fell in love with your wife? And then kind of stumble, and you'd be like, that's because there wasn't a moment. Like realistically, it's a series of little events that all built that up. And the business is the same thing. There's no like one trigger. I think, well, I'll ask you if there's any tips. Say, hey, if you could tell everybody one thing, who do they need to hire? What do they need to use? And we're all going to say Anow, but we're not here to say that. It's a series of small little things. Like you said, 16 principles, but then they add up into really, really big things. I look at that, and it's like relationships and business too, and like they're very, very similar.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's not just one thing. And it's not just one principle. If it was just one principle, let's take for one of the examples that we laid out there was, the law of savings, right? So let's say that you just implemented the law of savings, but you didn't implement any of the other 15 principles. Well, you're going to find some success, right? There's
Yeah.
definitely some truth in saving 10% for a rainy day, but guess what? That principle has to be in combination with the law of investment, right? What are you going to do with that 10%? Stick it in under your mattress, right? Inflation alone will decrease that, right? And you've
Yeah.
already lost right off the bat. Stick it in a bank. Guess what? That's not keeping up with inflation either, right?
No.
So these principles have to work in combination with one another in order to be successful. One of the things that I started teaching in the very beginning of the appraiser coach and the coaching side of things is the what I call the three-leg stool approach to business, and it basically is technology, human resources, and then procedures or processes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those three legs hold up that stool. The stool is your business and your success, right? You take away one of those, and just think about if you've got a three-leg stool, you take away one of those legs and see how steady it's going to be. You take two away and you're going to have a problem, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the point here. Whether it be the 16 principles of prosperity or it be the three-leg stool, these things have to work in combination with one another. And that's a good thing because it gives you ability to be able, it gives you flexibility and freedom and space to fail. Right? You can fail on one of those for a time period and not fail on all of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a weak leg on technology, those other two legs will hold you up long enough for you to fix that leg and get back up on your feet. But if you're only utilizing one or two of those principles, you're probably going to stay pretty stuck in what you've been doing all along, which may be okay. There's a lot of very happy appraisers doing what they've done for the last 25 years. And then there's others that want to maybe move beyond. And most of the coaching that I do is helping them not just to make more money, but mostly people come to me because they want more time. They're
Mm-hmm.
tired of working the 60, 70, 80 hours a week that it takes sometimes to run this business. And what they really want is freedom. They really want to take a 2-week vacation and not have their appraisal business stop. They really want to work like I do 15 to 20 hours a week and not 40 anymore. They're getting tired. You know, they still love what they do, but by golly, 60, 70 hours a week is a challenge.
What's the first thing that you say to people like that? Like what's the top pieces of advice you can share to them? I'm sure everybody's a little bit different, but at the same time, we're all appraisers. We're all the same.
Yeah. So it's a question I get asked often. And in fact, when people first come to me for mentoring, they don't say this out loud because they probably realize there's not an answer to this. But I think a lot of them come with this attitude of, okay, Dustin, here I am. Tell me what I need to know, right?
Tell me exactly what I need to know and
Right.
give me a work plan. And I'll check the
Right.
boxes
Yeah,
and I'll go
exactly.
do it. Yeah.
Exactly. I tell a story in my Go Create Some Value workshop about working at McDonald's. That was my first job. I was 14 years old, and I was working the grill. Yeah, I flip burgers for a living.
Good for you.
I've been there, done that, and I was back in the back. And to make a long story short, the owner came with the group from McDonald's University, and they came in with their white coats, and they spent 2 days, just watching. It was intimidating, right? They're just watching what we're doing. And at the end of that, now they made several changes in the restaurant that I don't know about because I didn't work that side. But for as far as the grill goes, they made one change. They wanted me to move the pickles from here to here. That was it.
Based on watching you and how you work.
Right, exactly. Me and others.
Yeah.
And when I questioned the owner about that, I thought that was a little weird. Now, keep in mind, I'm 14 years old, so I don't have a lot of insight. But he said to me, that will save 0.02 seconds per burger. I thought, wow. So these big fancy coats came in from McDonald's University, and that's what they changed. 0.02% or 0.02 seconds per burger. That's how much they're going to save. Well, remember, Marty, what it says on that sign. Now, back then it said millions and millions served, right? Now it says billions and billions served, but you start to add that up, and all of a sudden it starts to make a difference. And I call that kaizen. That's a Japanese term that basically means little things that make a big difference. Mm-hmm. So when people come to me for coaching, they need to understand that it's not going to be one thing. It's not going to be a magic bean. I'm not going to wave my magic wand and say, here, you're all fixed.
Yeah.
What will happen is we'll talk about a series of little changes that you can make. And any one of those things, you're going to argue with me. Well, Dustin, that only takes 5 more minutes. Well, I'm used to doing that. I can't really train somebody else to do that. Or I've been doing that this way for 30 years. That's just a little thing. Here's the thing. You start to implement these little tiny things, and all of a sudden, boom, synergy happens, and all of these things start to work together, and all of a sudden you stop working 60 hours a week, making $100,000 a year, and you work 15 hours a week and you make $1 million a year. And that literally is something that I've seen over and over and over again with my clients.
Yeah, no, that's extremely impressive, and I think that's what's so key when appraisers that are out there that need help is to get a coach. Like there's so much you can read, there's so much you can try, which is great. Trial and error depends how thick your skin is and how persistent you are. But I say this all the time. I mean, I had one different varying parts of my business. I mean, I had my dad was my mentor too. I worked for him as an appraiser for 10 years. And it's just, but then on like the Anow side, same thing is you need a mentor, and it's a little bit of an accountability thing. It's a motivator, and a lot of people I find, and myself included in the past, have gone to a coach and say, you know what, this part of my business is struggling. Can you help me? Can you mentor me? And you show up expecting, like I said before, that person to say, just almost come live with me for 5 days, learn about me, tell me what to eat, what to drink, when and where I should answer my emails, and when I should be doing this. And like that doesn't exist. It's not out there. It's being able to sit down and being motivated, but then learn from a coach like you, where it's here's the things that you need to do, and then stay on top of it. It's not your job to pester them, but you have to empower them so that they feel like they want to do it, and then commit to it, and then get it. And I'm sure you've got a lot of stories about people that probably didn't follow through and didn't do the things that you said, like that you mentioned, that you suggest in your coaching, and just fall off, and then look at you and say it was your coaching. That was a failure. Not saying that's ever happened. I mean, I know you've had a lot of great success stories. I just know people.
No, you're exactly right. No, it does. And I love this word coach, right? There's a reason that I coined the term the appraiser coach when I started mentoring. There's a lot of different words I could have used in there: trainer or mentor or teacher. I love the word coach because of what it implies. When you think of any athlete, and by the way, I'm not an athlete. You can tell just by looking at me. The idea of
neither are most coaches either. So
there's a coach that will guide you and direct you, but on the field you have to do it, right? The coach doesn't go out there and run the football. Exactly. The coach doesn't go out there and make the basket. The coach can only let you know what he thinks is best, and then you have to implement the plays. And so as a mentor, my goal is to not just teach, but to help you understand. And when you understand, to help you implement. And when you fail, to get back up and help you to brush off and say, okay, let's get back in there and let's do it again. And guess what? The appraiser coach has a coach. I've got a mentor. I've got somebody that I can bounce ideas off of that can hold me accountable. Because that is so important. No matter what level you're at, you need to have somebody you can reach out to and say, listen, here's my goals. Hold my feet to the fire. Or I need some help. I need to bounce some ideas off. I'm an external processor, Marty, and when I have a new idea or a new thought or a new way of taking things, trust me, my office manager is tired of hearing from me, right? Because I'll just talk through things and say, well, what about this and what about that, and just spitballing and throwing things up against the wall. I need that in order to make myself motivated, right? To help process and understand what it is that I even feel. Sometimes I don't know it until I say it out loud, but that's what it's all about. We have mastermind meetings across the country. We've got 7 of them now, and these are actual physical masterminds where we meet in person, right? We go to Chicago and we meet at a Marriott in Chicago, and there's 8 people around that table, and we spend the entire day talking about particular issues that people are dealing with everybody gets a whole hour to talk about whatever they want. Right? Hey, I just hired a VA. It didn't work out. Talk me through this. And you've got 7 other people around that table who have already been there, done that, who are helping you and assisting you and want you to succeed. I mean, these masterminds are incredible. And all of a sudden you've got 7 coaches right there helping you to be able to move forward in your business. It's fun. It's exciting. And it's a true principle, right? The idea of mentorship is a true principle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's super. That's so important. It's fun to hear about. Like I can only imagine what happens around there. So let's talk about that for a second too, because we talk about business, we talk about coaching, we talk about the things you can do. Like if we could talk all day, and I'm not going to ask you about what are the things that you can tell other people, because I want to know what worked for you specifically, because we're talking about you and your business. It's like and let's talk about technology. I'm trying to think of where I want to go with this. Let's talk about technology. So we talked about distos, talked about Anow. So what do you do with technology in your business, really? And then do you run into resistance on your team, or how do you deal with that? Where it's almost like job preservation comes into play, where it's like no. And so how do you deal with that? The change management process.
Well, let's just talk about Anow, because I think everybody here, understands what Anow is. The honest truth, Marty, is, and you might remember this, you had to twist my arm.
Oh, yeah.
You and your team had to twist my arm to go down this road of Anow. I get approached, as you can imagine, by lots of different software companies who want me to try out their system and, give me your honest feedback, and here's a free copy, check it out, and would love to know your thoughts. Well, I don't have time to do all of that, right? Especially don't have time to implement it with my team. I've got too much going on. And so I constantly say, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. And it was no different when Anow approached me. It's like, I've got my spreadsheet, thanks.
I saw the spreadsheets were awesome. My wife did the data entry on bringing you over into Anow. That's how much we wanted you in.
I remember. In fact, it was a little bit of a stink about it. I said, okay, you want me to check this out? Then I've got a few demands as well, right? We've got a lot of records going back years and years. I want that implemented, and you guys were kind to do that. And Marty, the honest truth is, even 3 months into it, I was not convinced that Anow was worth it. It was still a struggle. I was still learning. My office was complaining, because guess what? None of us like change, right? None of us want to do things different. When I first went to my team and said, we're going to try something new, eye rolls, right? Are you kidding me? Really? We're just getting used to this spreadsheet thing. We're going to do something different. Forget it, right? Yeah. And I'm the boss. I get to make the ultimate decisions, right? So the dictator, steps up to the plate and says, by golly, we're going to do it. And rah, and I try to boost them up and say, no, it'll be great, let's do it. Well, 3 months into it, I still wasn't convinced. Now, what it finally was another mastermind student of mine, Matt, one of my clients, and he said, Dustin, cut the apron strings. He said, you're still doing both. You're entering in Anow and you're entering in this spreadsheet. You got to cut off the spreadsheet. And I'm like, yeah, but what if Anow doesn't work out? Then I don't have this record over here. He's like, trust me on this, cut the apron strings. I did the same thing you did. Cut the apron strings, just go with Anow. And I'm telling you, 2 weeks later, I was, I'm sold. I'm forever. But this goes to the principle, right? This is just an example.
Yeah.
This isn't to boost up Anow. This is just an example of what happens when you say technology. I'm always open to new technology and implementation, but then again, I also have to do a sales job on my staff. I have to convince them, right? Not that you can't make the decision, but you want morale to be good, right? You want morale to be up, and you don't want constantly changing and people just, not knowing what they're doing. And so you've got to do it strategically. You got to do it in a way that convinces them that this is good. But that's the struggle, is keeping up with the changes. And then as a business, you've got to decide. And by the way, I want to make it very clear, Marty, I'm not here to tell anybody that being a single man appraisal shop or single woman appraisal shop is a bad thing. It works for a lot of people. I was on the phone just last week with a single mom who does appraisal kind of part-time to supplement income, and it works for her, right? And we talked about the law of delegation. We talked about some technology things, and honestly, for her, it doesn't really work. That's not her goal. That's not her vision. And not everybody should have this goal of doing $1 million every year, right? That's not necessarily what we're all trying to reach for. It comes with its own set of problems. Trust me, I've got 13 employees now, right? I've got 13. I hope they're not listening to this, but people I've got to babysit, right? And so it comes with this whole slew of different problems than you had before. And for some people, that's not them. That's not what they want to do. Great, that's fine. A mentor and coach can help you to get where you want to go, because a good mentor is going to listen to you. And instead of saying, hey, John, this is what you need to do, it's, hey, John, what do you want to do? What is your ultimate goal? What is your ultimate vision? Paint for me a picture 2 years down the road. What does life look like? What does your business look like? What does your relationship look like? What does your health look like? Let's talk about it all. Paint for me the picture, and then as a coach, I can help you to get there.
Yeah. Do you want to work 4 days a week? Do you want to work 20 hours a week? How do you quantify it in terms that make you happy? Do I want to make $1 million a year? Maybe. What does that mean to you? And it's just, yeah, like picking those goals. Cause I've heard it. One of my favorite stories, honestly, was from someone. She was at came to a conference last year, Valuation Expo, and I had talked to her, and she used Anow for a long time, and it's probably my favorite story out of everybody. So I apologize if you told me a story, but this is my favorite one, where she said she came there, she did a little presentation for us, and I was thanking her, like, thank you obviously for coming to Vegas. We comped her on that, but thank you for doing that, and that was really nice of you. And she's like, no, thank you, because you know what, I was able to buy an RV, and now I take Fridays off and 3-day weekends, and I take my dog and we go out every weekend. And it's like that to us as a company is a small account.
That's awesome.
But the best thing I've ever heard. And now, and I was like, that was her goal. I was like, I get, honestly, like, if you know me, I get goosebumps even telling that story again, because it's like, that meant so much to me, being like, that's what was important to you. We helped you achieve that. So it's super cool. And she had that, like, it wasn't like, no, you know what, I do want to work Fridays and I want to buy a bigger RV. Maybe someone else wants to do that, and that's totally cool. But it's just figuring out what works for you. I think a lot of people haven't done yet, and they just look at money and bills, and it's, I think, as in a one person appraisal shop especially, it's really it can be a lifestyle business, and you should make decisions based on that, your freedom, how you do things. And then if you want to manage people, you go into the route that you did, and delegating and hiring people and creating operational efficiencies everywhere. So
really, people have maybe heard me say this before, is my definition of wealth. My definition of wealth is maybe a little bit different than some. It's not just about financial wealth, but for me, the definition of wealth, and this is what I'm constantly striving for, is to do what I want, with whom I want, when I want, because I want.
Yeah.
Let me just repeat that again. It's to do what I want, with whom I want, when I want, because I want. I mean, that's the reason, right? That's free. That's the ability to be able to do your thing. And so right now, Marty, my biggest goal, and it's been my goal for the last 2 years. I thought I could accomplish it last year, but I was unable to. But it's looking better and better for this year. My goal is to become mostly location independent, so that I'm not tied to the office. I'm not tied to East Idaho. That I can leave and live in Costa Rica for 3 months if I want, and be okay with that, and my business still thrive and still run. And so this idea that as entrepreneurs, we're constantly moving in that, when that mountain is reached, right, the mountain moves. And this is the constant problem with an entrepreneur.
Never satisfied. My wife still was like, why aren't you more excited? I'm like, oh, I am, but I already know what we're going for next.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, the biggest challenge we have is to stop and celebrate a little bit. But here's the thing, and this is the goal, and this is the key, and this is with my clients. When I sit down to do mentoring, we always start, even if it's a short session, right? Even if it's an hour long, and that's, they've just hired me for 1 hour, right? And we're sitting on Zoom. Guess what? We're going to spend the first 10 to 15 minutes talking about what you want, right? Yeah. What is it, your vision? Because I don't want to spend the next 45 minutes talking about what I think you should have. You've got, as a business owner and as a person, you've got to know what your ultimate goal is. You've got to know what your ultimate, what I call vision story, looks like. That you know what you're reaching for. And as a mentor, I can help you to get there, but I can't help you to get there. The old idea of Alice in Wonderland, when she meets the Cheshire Cat and she asks for directions, and he says, "Where are you going?" And she says, "Well, I don't know." And he goes, "Well, then any road will take you there, right?" As a coach, I can tell you any road you want to take, but you've got to be able to find out what direction or what your destination is in order to get the right road.
Yeah. And how many people would you say know what they want?
Oh, wow. I'm a little bit
think they know what they want.
Biased, because most people, I think, understand if they're going to hire the appraiser coach, they need to come with some idea of what they want. So I would say most people that come to me at least have a vague idea of what they want. Now, we might need to spend some time, really drilling down and trying to pixelate that and make sure that they really understand, what direction they're going to go. But in general, if you're talking about the general world, let's talk about appraisers in general, I'd say 2%. I'd say 98% of appraisers are just doing what they do, and they do it every day. And you see it on the forums. You see people that are disgruntled, that are upset, that are, they don't really love their life. And I think it ebbs and flows, right? And again, that doesn't mean that my life should be your life. I'm not saying that anybody that's in a different situation is in a bad situation, right?
Yeah.
There's many appraisers, like the gal that I talked to last week, one of my clients, who is very, very happy with where she's at with her business. She wanted to tweak a few things and get a little bit more time back, and that's right, why she hired me. But for the most part, she was fine with the idea of a single woman shop. That's what she wanted to continue to do. And again, it's not me pushing
Awesome.
her, it's me helping her to get where she wants to as well.
And that's the sign of a good coach too. It's not like a one goal that everybody needs to go to. That's super important. And I think there's a bunch of questions in the chat here asking, about like what type of coach that you should get, industry specific or not. And I mean, it comes back to what you want to do. I mean, if there's like a facet of your business like accounting you're really bad at, well then yeah, you can go find an accounting mentor. But really, if it's the appraisal business as a whole, my opinion is you should have someone that knows this industry, because I say this all the time, and a lot of the reason why I think that Anow has been successful is because appraising is quite a niche business. For the most part, most people don't have any interaction with the appraiser other than, think of like even refinancing. Like they barely get involved in that. And then you buy a house, you go to the bank. That person goes and now orders the appraisal, and the current owner deals with the appraiser. You don't even talk to them. You don't know anything about it. You're like, it just happened. I got my money. Awesome. So it's really hard to coach somebody unless they've lived there and breathed that. I say that all day long. And that's why, like, to these comments of like the appraiser coach, and it's like, there's so many ways to run an appraisal business. Look at the amount of industries out there that you can be highly successful solopreneur, a one-person shop, or be able to grow organically if you wanted to, or aggressively grow, more of like what you did, which is and being disciplined and persistent. But I think it's really important to use someone industry specific in our world, especially.
Well, and I will say this, and thank you, Terry. Terry just paid a very nice compliment to both your software and myself. But I also noticed that earlier it was mentioned that I want to make sure that we really focus on this, and the idea that there is more than one way to go about this. For example, I agree with you, Marty, that an industry specific coach will help you with the fine details, right?
Mm-hmm.
A regular business coach is not going to teach you about Anow software. A regular business coach is not going to teach you, specifically on how to train somebody in the appraisal software world, or in the appraisal world itself. And so in that sense, to be able to take the principles, right, and marry them with the practices, that probably does take an industry specific coach. And there's many of them out there. There's not just one great coach for someone. I'm good friends with Roy Meyer, who is a wonderful coach, and Blaine Fyan, who is a wonderful coach.
Yep.
There are so many others out there, and more people wanting to share their knowledge. In fact, I was just on a call this morning with one of my mastermind students, and he said, I just want to be an adult about this. And I said, okay. And he says, I'm thinking of doing some coaching and doing some mentoring to other people. And he told me about a specific niche, and I'm like, go for it, man. I mean, you don't need the more the merrier, right? The more people out there sharing this great information with people and helping them to become better, I'm all for that. I'm completely behind you. I do think that a regular coach can teach you the principles, right? Those principles of prosperity, you won't see the word appraisal once in those principles, right? The principle of savings, the principle of investment, the principle of law delegation, the principle of technology, all of these things will be applied. In fact, Marty, I've belonged to a mastermind group here locally for the last 8 years. And it's changed over the years, but there's not one other appraiser in that group. We've got insurance salesmen, and we've got financial advisors, and we've got auto salesmen, and we've got a pizza franchise owner, and we've got all of these different. Guess what? We talk about principles that work in our businesses, and they work for every business. But yeah, on a level of taking the principles and marrying them with the practices, then industry specific coach is probably the way to go. But be careful, folks. Make sure that you vet these people. Make sure that the names that I mentioned are proven individuals who understand the principles, live them in their own lives, and that's a key here, right? Mm-hmm. Don't just find somebody who's a guru and who's teaching principles but not really implementing in their own business. But find somebody that's right for you, and it's not always going to be the same person for everybody.
Yeah, that's what I think is like so important is we talk about coaching. I will talk about all day long, all the amazing success stories I've heard about Dustin. And it's true. Our customers who have come to us and then come to you first and then come to you after, or ones that have come to us through you, through referral, which we always love and appreciate. But it's being able to have that person that has lived and breathed it. And you see Dustin with his business, like we just talk about, like, yeah, you've got $1 million a year appraisal business. You don't look like a stressed out guy. You're not you're not vibrating in your chair saying, I need to get back at it. You're bothering me. This is great. Thanks, Marty. Okay, goodbye type of thing. It's like you're a very relaxed person. And I've known you for years. You're always this way. And it's super impressive to me doing that. So let me we've got a few more minutes here. I'd like to ask you a question. If you could offer some more free advice from
Absolutely.
it's just here's like what would you recommend for people, and what's the start of, if you're feeling like you're in a spot right now is like where you need more, like you feel like you need more but you don't know where to go. Is it get better software? Is it hire a coach? But like of all those things, like what's the high level, what do you recommend people do today? Like what can they leave with?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in two parts. Let me begin by answering maybe a question you didn't quite ask, but I want
Sure.
to share, and that is, what is the thing? What is the thing that no matter what coaching session I might be in, whether I'm in a mastermind group or a one-on-one coaching situation or with my all-star team, what's the one thing that I share most? And I would say the tool that I share more than any other tool is what I call the assembly line. And it's very simple. It's simply breaking down the process of appraisal from start to finish, right? It's step by step, bidding the order, accepting the order, putting it in Anow, starting the work file, doing the research. I mean, all of these things that we implement over and over again. Some appraisers get a little offended when I use the term assembly line because they get their backs up and they say, well, every appraisal is different and everybody's unique and it's not just an assembly line. We're not just creating a machine that just goes through these steps. Well,
You're not defending an appraisal right now. Save that
right.
defense mode for when someone complains. It's a system.
Exactly right. Yeah. So this idea that you have a system that works pretty much the same every time. I'll give you an example of where it might go off the rails just a little bit, but you've still got a system to accommodate this. And that is, let's say you do a drive-by, right? One of the steps on the regular assembly line would be setting up the appointment, right? Calling the homeowner or the realtor or the contact and saying, hey, can the appraiser come out there Thursday between 2 and 4? Yeah. You're not obviously going to do that with a drive-by. So in that sense, yes, it's unique to each appraisal, but the process is the same. You pretty much follow the same 36 steps every single time you do an appraisal. It's what you do with that assembly line that's really going to make it come on fire for you and really work for you, right? It's not just enough to list the steps, but now you break them down into what I call the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 level appraisal steps, meaning tier 1 is very basic, tier 2 is much more advanced, tier 3 is appraisal, meaning choosing comps, making adjustments, that kind of thing. And then you start to implement names in there, right? Who does what? And then you start to get a picture of what your overall business looks like. And then you go one step further and you start to implement average times, right? So how long does it on average take you to choose comps? How long on average does it take you to set up an appointment? And that includes the voicemail that you left and the text that got sent back and the back and forth. How many minutes actually does it take to set up an appointment? How many of us actually know that about our business? How many of us, there's a commercial on TV or on the radio that you hear often that says, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business, right? And it's so true. And if you don't know your system, you don't know your business. If I can't ask you, how long does it take you to make adjustments on average? And if your answer is, well, it depends. I mean, yeah, okay, sure, it depends. But on average, how long does it take you to do adjustments? If you can't answer that question, then you also can't answer the question of, do you have enough people? Are you training them properly? Are they working the right hours? Or are they in the right seat on the bus? Do you need to get rid of some people? All of these decisions that we make as business owners are dependent upon numbers. Just a quick, and I know we're out of time, Marty, but a quick, go. I told you this before, but I think it's important because we've talked about Anow here. Every week I do what I call ONI, which is short, it's an acronym for on it, not in it. Okay, on it, not in it. And it's time that I take away from appraisals, that I take away from coaching, that I take away from my wife and my kids and life. And I simply focus, no internet. I simply focus on my laptop and what's in front of me as far as, what do I need to work on for my business. It's about a 30 to 45 minute process every week, and I religiously do it. When I say religiously, and I say every week, about 3 times a month. So I give myself a little bit of flexibility. Remember the 82% rule, right? I give myself a little bit of time to cheat. But for the most part, on a weekly basis, I'm doing on it, not in it time, where I'm working on the business, not in the business. And in the past, I used to spend about an hour and a half, because the first 30 to 45 minutes, even sometimes up to an hour, were taking the spreadsheet that I had before, right? Before Anow, and organizing it and saying, okay, where are our numbers? How many did we do last month? How do we organize this to see, how many of these were manufactured homes or ERCs or, all of these other things that we do? How do I know how many private work assignments that we've done this last? Are we increasing, decreasing? How did we do this month compared to last month, or this month this year compared to the same month last year? All of these things, right, are super important to me as a business owner, and I would spend 45 minutes just putting the spreadsheet and manipulating the spreadsheet so I could even answer that question.
Yeah, you've got every month open and adding them together.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was a pain, right? And the numbers are still important to me now, but the time that it takes to get those numbers in front of me now, when I sit down to do my on it, not in it time, I immediately have those numbers, because all I have to do is hit 1 or 2 buttons, right? I go into Anow, I hit this button, I hit that button, all of a sudden those numbers are in front of me. And I've spent about half as much time as I used to spend on it, not in it, because I'm able to now focus on decisions that I need to make as a business owner, rather than crunching those numbers and making it work. And that's just one example of what technology can do to help you to be a better business owner. Again, law of delegation, technology, procedures, putting that together. It's one thing to have the laser, right? It's a whole other thing to implement it efficiently. And that's where those procedures come through, and that 3-leg stool really comes together.
No, that's awesome advice. I like that. I keep moving around. I'm blinded by these blinds, so apologize. But honestly, this has been a really great chat. I hope it was useful for everybody. We're up on the hour right now, a little bit over, so I appreciate you guys sticking with it. I could talk to you all day long about process, and I'm sure it sounds like a lot of people would stay here. But honestly, like, I can't speak high enough volumes about Dustin and his coaching, like from a coaching level, from a personal level, knowing him as a person, just really easy to work with, guys. So if you need help, go see Dustin and talk to him. You guys can work it out if you're a fit or not, whether you use Anow or not. I mean, always, like, I have to add in, check out anow.com. If you're already a customer today, thanks for joining us. And if you don't know Dustin, now you know him. Again, fantastic person. So thank you so much, Dustin, for taking the hour, just chatting. I love business. I love appraising. And hearing about a cool success story like this, I'm the type of person that gets excited. I mean, I'm motivated now. I'm thinking of there's a few things that I could probably do here, some principles that I could come up with, because I don't have 16, but I gotta now I'm like, okay, now I gotta get 17. I'm just kidding.
Well, those 16, I started a series here, started recording a couple of weeks ago, and they'll come out in a couple of weeks. As you know, I do a podcast, the Appraiser Coach podcast. You can find it on Apple and whatever device you listen to podcasts on. But in the next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to do a series where I'm going to go through each of the 16 principles. So if people know what those are and they're interested in what those 16 principles are, then we're going to be doing about a 10-minute section on each of those principles, and that will be coming out here in a couple of weeks. But Marty, this has been a pleasure, honestly. Because I consider you a friend, and I just felt like it was just a fun talk, just a couple people on their back deck, just having a chat about the industry. And
totally is.
It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, anytime. We'll do it again. So yeah, like I said to everybody in the comments, thanks for the great comments, and check us out, anow.com, book a demo or talk to a salesperson or myself. I mean, my emails, I'm always open with it. It's marty@anow.com. Ask me anything. And then again, the Appraiser Coach, it's theappraisercoach.com, right?
The Appraiser Coach.
The Appraiser Coach. Yeah. Let's remember the Appraiser Coach. Okay. So thanks, everyone. We'll send out a recording to you after about this. If you have any other questions after the fact, reach out to Anow or Dustin. I'm happy to get back to you. But again, Dustin, you have an awesome day. Everybody else, enjoy the rest of your day as well, and we'll see you again.
Love it. Thanks, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.